The Gaza Strip. It's a name synonymous with conflict, with suffering, with a seemingly endless cycle of violence. This tiny sliver of land, bordering Israel and Egypt, is home to over 2 million Palestinians. For decades, they've lived under Israeli occupation, their lives restricted, their futures uncertain. The history of Gaza is complex, but one thing is clear. It's a place where peace has remained elusive, where tensions simmer, ready to boil over at a moment's notice. The recent escalation sparked by the events of October 7, 2023 is the latest chapter in this tragic saga. October 7, 2023. A date that will be remembered for generations to come. This date will forever be etched in the memories of Israelis and Palestinians alike. It marked a significant turning point in the long-standing conflict between these two peoples. It was on this day that Hamas, the militant group that controls Gaza, launched a surprise attack on Israel. The attack was unprecedented in its scale and coordination. The assault, a complex operation involving infiltration through tunnels, drone strikes, and ground offensives, caught Israel off guard. The meticulous planning behind the attack was evident in its execution. The images that flashed across our screens that day, burning vehicles, panicked civilians running for cover, the sounds of gunfire and explosions painted a stark picture. This was not just another flare-up, this was different. The intensity and ferocity of the conflict were unlike anything seen in recent years. Israel responded swiftly and decisively with airstrikes and a full-scale military mobilization. The nation's military machinery was set into motion with a clear objective, the stated goal to cripple Hamas and restore security. The Israeli government made it clear that they would not tolerate such an attack on their soil. But as the bombs rained down on Gaza, another narrative began to emerge, one of civilian casualties, of homes reduced to rubble, of a population trapped in a war zone. The human cost of the conflict became increasingly apparent, raising questions about the true price of security and the path to lasting peace. War is chaos. It's messy, it's unpredictable, and it's often the innocent who suffer the most. In the fog of war, information is scarce, and the line between truth and propaganda can be blurred. But one thing is undeniable. The ongoing conflict in Gaza has claimed the lives of countless civilians, many of them women and children. Hospitals, already stretched thin before the recent escalation, are now overwhelmed, struggling to cope with the influx of casualties. Basic necessities like food, water, and medicine are in short supply. The images coming out of Gaza are heartbreaking. Children orphaned, families torn apart, a sense of despair hanging heavy in the air. In the aftermath of the October 7th attacks, Israel imposed a total siege on Gaza. This means no electricity, no fuel, no food, no medicine. Nothing is allowed in or out. Now, you might be thinking, well, that's tough, but surely they're making exceptions for humanitarian aid? Nope, not even that. It's a complete and utter shutdown. This isn't just about punishing Hamas. It's about collectively punishing the entire population of Gaza. It's about making life so unbearable that they pressure Hamas into submission. It's a tactic that's been condemned by human rights groups as a clear violation of international law, a form of collective punishment that's both cruel and counterproductive.
Section 5. Displaced and dispossessed, the brutality of home demolitions. Imagine this. You're told to evacuate your home, that it's about to be demolished. The place where you built your life, where your children took their first steps, where countless memories were made, is about to be reduced to dust. You have minutes, maybe hours, to gather your belongings, to grab whatever mementos you can carry, before your life is literally reduced to rubble. The clock is ticking, and the sense of urgency is overwhelming. This is the reality for countless Palestinians in Gaza and the West Bank, where Israeli authorities routinely demolish Palestinian homes. These demolitions are not isolated incidents. They are part of a broader strategy that has been ongoing for decades. The reasons given for these demolitions vary. Building without a permit, which is nearly impossible to obtain, alleged involvement in militant activities, often without concrete evidence, or simply being located in an area slated for Israeli settlement expansion. These areas are often strategically chosen to further political and territorial goals. But the impact is always the same. Families displaced, livelihoods destroyed, dreams shattered in an instant, a community living in constant fear. The psychological toll is immense, leaving scars that last a lifetime. The sense of insecurity and instability permeates every aspect of life, making it difficult to plan for the future or even find solace in the present.
Section 6. An apartheid reality, systemic discrimination in the occupied territories. For many Palestinians, life under Israeli occupation is one of constant humiliation and discrimination. It's a system where their movements are restricted, their rights curtailed, and their opportunities limited, all based on their ethnicity. This system, characterized by separate laws, separate roads, separate checkpoints, has been described by human rights organizations as a form of apartheid. From restrictions on movement and access to resources to discriminatory policies in housing, education, and employment, Palestinians in the occupied territories face systematic disadvantages that perpetuate a cycle of poverty and inequality.
Section 7. A parallel system inequality within Israel's borders. The issue of Palestinian rights doesn't stop at the borders of the occupied territories. Within Israel itself, Palestinian citizens, who make up about 20% of the population, face a different but no less insidious form of discrimination. It's a system where they're treated as second-class citizens, their voices marginalized, their experiences often ignored and overlooked. From disparities in education and healthcare to discriminatory housing policies and land allocation, the inequalities are stark. Palestinian citizens face systemic inequality. Additionally, groups like Doctors Without Borders allege that Israeli forces target hospitals and the press.
Section 8. Red lines crossed, attacks on medical personnel and aid workers. In any conflict, there are certain lines that should never be crossed. Attacking medical personnel, hospitals, and humanitarian aid workers is one of them. These individuals and organizations are not combatants. They're there to provide life-saving assistance to those in need, regardless of their nationality, ethnicity, or political affiliation. Yet in the chaos of the Gaza conflict, we've seen a disturbing pattern of attacks on medical facilities and aid workers. These attacks, often carried out with impunity, not only endanger the lives of those delivering aid, but also deprive those in desperate need of essential medical care.
Section 9. A bleak landscape. The humanitarian crisis in Gaza. The humanitarian crisis in Gaza is dire. With the siege in place, the Strip is on the brink of collapse. Hospitals are running out of essential supplies, power outages are commonplace, and clean water is scarce. The people of Gaza are facing a humanitarian catastrophe, and the international community must act urgently to alleviate their suffering. The situation is particularly dire for children, who make up a significant portion of the population. Malnutrition rates are soaring, schools have been closed indefinitely, and the psychological trauma of living through constant bombardment will have long-lasting effects.
Section 10. A call to action upholding international law and human rights. The situation in Gaza is a stain on our collective conscience. The images of devastated buildings and children navigating war-torn streets are a stark reminder of the human cost of conflict. We cannot stand idly by while innocent lives are lost, while homes are destroyed, and while communities are torn apart. The rubble of destroyed homes and the grief of families should compel us to act. A whole population is held hostage to a conflict that seems to have no end in sight. People waiting at checkpoints and crowded refugee camps are daily realities for many. We must demand better from our leaders. Political leaders must be held accountable, and activists around the world are already raising their voices, demanding action. We must hold them accountable for upholding international law, for protecting civilians, and for ensuring that humanitarian aid reaches those in need. The role of peacekeeping forces and humanitarian workers is crucial in these efforts. We must pursue a just and lasting peace. Peace talks and symbolic gestures are steps in the right direction, but they must be backed by genuine commitment and action. This isn't about taking sides. It's about standing up for what's right. It's about global solidarity and recognizing our shared humanity. It's about recognizing the humanity of all those affected by this conflict, regardless of their nationality, ethnicity, or religion. Families embracing and children playing together remind us of the world we aspire to create. The path to peace may be long and arduous, but it is a journey we must undertake. Peaceful protests and symbolic murals are expressions of hope and resilience. We cannot afford to give up hope. Candlelight vigils and signs of hope are powerful reminders that we must keep striving for peace. We must continue to raise our voices, to demand accountability, and to engage in community efforts for peace. Signing petitions and participating in community meetings are ways we can all contribute. We must work towards a future where Israelis and Palestinians can finally live together in peace and security. The sight of children from different backgrounds playing together and symbolic peace doves in flight gives us hope for a better tomorrow.